Okay, let's jump right into a really cool one. We're going to look at a train from way back in the early 1900s that just seemed to completely ignore the laws of physics. This is the wild story of Louis Brennan's self-balancing monorail, a true piece of engineering genius that's kind of been lost to time. I mean, seriously, think about that. A massive 22-ton vehicle just chilling on one single steel rail. It sounds totally impossible, right? But it didn't just balance. Get this. It would lean into corners all by itself, like a motorcycle, without the driver doing a thing. So the big question is, how in the world did it actually work? The brain behind this whole operation was an inventor named Louis Brennan. And after years of tinkering, he showed off his full-sized working prototype to a completely amazed public back in 1910. And we're not talking about some little tabletop model here. This was the real deal, big enough to carry passengers. And Brennan's design wasn't just a cool party trick. It had some serious potential. A single rail meant building railways would be way cheaper. We're talking half the steel. It could zip around corners much faster than a regular train, and even though it looked precarious, it was unbelievably stable. It really did seem like the future. So to really get Brennan's secret, we've got to dive into the science that makes it all tick. The entire balancing act, the whole shebang, comes down to the super weird but wonderful physics of gyroscopes. The key concept here is this thing called precession. So you have a spinning disk, right? Its momentum wants to keep it perfectly stable. But if you try to push it over, it does something really strange. Instead of falling in the direction you pushed it, it kind of moves sideways at a right angle to that force. That's precession, and it's the absolute heart of this whole invention. Let's break that down real simple. Imagine you spin a toy top. You poke the top of it, trying to knock it over. But instead of just falling, the whole thing just kind of swivels. Brennan saw that effect and had a total light bulb moment. He realized he could use that weird sideways force to fight back against a train trying to fall over. So Brennan built a little model train, stuck a spinning flywheel in it, and it worked at first. The train stayed perfectly upright. But there's always a but, right? The second he tried to make it go around a corner, he hit a huge snag. So here was the problem. A single gyroscope is stubborn. It wants to keep its exact orientation in space. So when the train turned, the gyro tried to keep pointing straight ahead. This created a force that literally just pushed the train right off the rail. His solution, though, was brilliant. He used two gyros, spinning in opposite directions and connected by a gear. Now when the train turned, the weird forces from each gyro just canceled each other out. Problem solved. The train stayed stable. Now that he'd cracked that crucial problem on the small scale, Brennan was ready to go big, like really big. He started building the full-sized vehicle, and the scale of this thing was just mind-boggling. This prototype was no toy. It was 12 meters long. That's nearly 40 feet. And it weighed an incredible 22 tons. All of that balanced by two gigantic gyros spinning at a blistering 3,500 revolutions per minute. But scaling up this much uncovered a brand new giant problem. And the answer to that was a big, fat no. The natural force of precession, the thing that worked so well on his little model, was just no match for the massive force of gravity trying to pull 22 tons of steel to the ground. The gyros just weren't powerful enough, or fast enough to react. The whole project was about to derail. Brennan needed a way to seriously beef up the power of his gyros. He couldn't just rely on natural physics anymore. He had to take control. And this is what led to his most brilliant idea of all, a powerful, active, pneumatic system. See, Brennan's huge realization was that he couldn't just let the gyros precess on their own. He had to force them to precess way faster and with much more power than they ever would naturally. That was the only way to create a counterforce strong enough to work. And check out how this amazing setup worked. As the train starts to lean, even a tiny bit, the gyros begin their slow, natural precession. But that tiny movement is hooked up to an actuator rod. That rod opens a valve. Whoosh! A blast of compressed air is released. The air pushes a big gear rack, which then violently forces the gyros to precess at a super high speed. This creates a massive correcting force that slams the 22-ton train right back into a perfectly upright position. Instantly. What's so genius about this is that it's a force multiplier. It took the tiny initial force of the train's own tilt and used compressed air to amplify it into a huge correcting force. Basically, the very act of falling over was the power source for righting itself, which made the system incredibly powerful and responsive. So the prototype was a massive success. I mean, it worked perfectly. It really did seem like the future of transportation. So why aren't we all riding around on gyroscopic monorails today? Well, despite being a technical masterpiece, the invention just never caught on. In the end, it just came down to some boring practical realities. The two-railed system was already everywhere, deeply entrenched across the entire globe. The monorail was also really expensive. Every single train car needed its own complex, costly gyroscope system. And ultimately, investors just got cold feet and weren't confident enough to pour money into such a radical new piece of tech. The whole project just kind of fizzled out. It's such an amazing story of pure ingenuity, but it also kind of leaves you wondering. Brennan's monorail was perfect. It was a brilliant solution that was just beaten by economics and bad timing. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What other incredible inventions just like this one are out there, lost to history, that could have totally changed the world we live in today?